humongous news, I think. As far as all-star games go, the NFL released a statement today saying that underclassmen that declare for the draft will now be eligible to play in the Senior Bowl, the Shrine Bowl, and the HBCU Legacy Bowl. This was announced just today and kind of like took the steam out of us because we both released Senior Bowl predictions each of the last Wednesday, and kind of hurt that a little bit. But first, I mean, what do you think this means in the grand scheme of things, for 2024 and beyond?
I think it's a good thing for the Senior Bowl, for the Shrine Game. I know a lot of people are kind of upset, obviously being called the Senior Bowl. There's going to be juniors there, or the tradition, the old school way and mentality. It was always kind of weird in terms of, well, who's eligible for the game, who's not eligible for the game. Especially they added, when I started covering the graduation, hey, if you graduated from college, you can play, even if it's only been 3 years, and that made people eligible. So it's like, let everyone play if they want to play. We're still gonna have most of the underclassmen are not going to play in the game. The high profile first round picks into second round picks, they're not going to, but you have a lot of underclassmen that declare, maybe they're mid-round picks, they want to move up, they haven't run at the combine yet, their agents, hey, this might be a good way to talk to teams to get in. And you talked about on Twitter, Brian, this helps the games like the Hula Bowl, the smaller bowls, because now some of these older players are gonna not go to the Senior Bowl, they're not going to get picked for the Shrine. Well, you got a pretty good roster maybe in these smaller games. I think it helps everyone out, makes for better all-star games, makes it better to scout. I just want better talent. To me, this is the best of every world.
I mean, let's look at it like this. Last year, it was six? The number of underclassmen to declare was down exponentially last year from what it has been. And we've talked about that ad nauseum as to why, because of the extra year and everybody, the NIL money now, people you don't have to rush out to be a 7th round pick when you can just stay in college and make more than that, right? So kids are going back to school more. So the number of underclassmen come down, but let's just take that number last year. I believe it was 67 or 69. I'm not sure. Let's just say 30 of those guys go to the Senior Bowl. 30 guys don't. Another 10 go to the Shrine or whatever, and then so on and so forth. Those number of players that would have been to the Senior Bowl, well, those 30 underclassmen that are in the Senior Bowl now, that takes 30 senior players down that go down to the Shrine. Well, that's 30 more players that don't go to the Shrine now that are going to get down to the Hula Bowl, because remember, there is no NFLPA Bowl anymore. They disbanded that game this year. So now the Hula Bowl is the number 3 collegiate all-star game, right? I don't think there's any argument there. Now, they were almost as good as the NFLPA last year anyway. So they're now the de facto number 3. Their roster's going to get better here. So I feel like it's good for them. And to a lesser extent, maybe the Tropical Bowl and the CGS might get a handful of players they wouldn't have gotten as well. So it's going to be interesting from that perspective, as far as not calling it the Senior Bowl or whatever. It doesn't matter. Like you said, there's been third-year redshirt sophomores that played in the Senior Bowl. A few years ago, there was a receiver from Clemson. I can't remember which one it was now, but he was a 3-year player, but he graduated early, so he played in the Senior Bowl. Well, obviously, he's not a senior, so let's just let that go. It doesn't matter. It's just a name.
Yeah. I mean, they don't have to change the name. Like, they're not going to change the name with that. That's always the case. So, like, let's not worry about what it's called or who's going. What this does is elevate the talent, because the Senior Bowl's not going to take an underclassman just because they're underclassmen either.
No.
They're not just going to be like, okay, well, if you declare you're in, like, they're going to be very picky. They've already built their boards with everyone included, and you might have a surprise, right, Brian? I mean, you might have a surprise that a high-profile player, we've seen it happen, does show up and does declare. I'm sure Jim Nagy's on, going to be on the phone with
right now.
Drake May and Caleb Williams, and here's what we can do. They're not going to show up, but you could have maybe a Malik Neighbors surprisingly show up And hey, that's exciting for everyone.
Right. Travion Henderson, Ohio State could
Yeah.
show.
Yeah, I mean, the
Or
running backs is a really
yeah,
good,
especially
you
in this
know,
class, right?
an agent might say, hey, you should go. It might help you be the number one running back taken. It might get you in the back end of the first rounds. Travion Henderson and Braylon Allen and these running backs, if they get an invite, they might show up.
Yeah, we were talking back and forth on Discord. We don't think like Caleb Williams or Drake May is going to be here, right?
No.
But
I mean,
we're not getting Marvin Harrison Jr. at the Senior Bowl. It would be awesome. I'd love to see it. It's not going to happen. But you could get a Keon Coleman or Xavier Worthy or one of those guys, who wants to try to move themselves up the pecking order, maybe, or like you said, Malik Neighbors, maybe they want to try to go from a late teens, early 20s spot into that top 10. Maybe they want to try to do that. You could see something like that. It's going to be interesting how that works out. I'm here for it though. More talent coming in front of me 3 miles from my front porch. I'm all about it. Let me see the best of the best out there. You had one more thing I want to talk about because I loved your comment here or your prediction, if you will, on Twitter. You said within 5 years, you think that undrafted players with eligibility left are going to they're going to let them go back to college. You think that's coming?
Yeah, I think that's the next step. It's already kind of been, people are calling for it, but like the NBA does, that you can basically not sign with an agent. And honestly, they might not even have that rule with NIL. Like I know agents who are NIL advisors for college players, and then they're their agent after they graduate. Like
funny how that works out.
So who cares? Like that's basically what's going to happen anyway. But if you get drafted, that's it. You're in. And so it gives teams an incentive in those late rounds to draft maybe underclassmen players that they want. But if not, I think a lot of NCAA teams would like to have some of these players back that declare early and mistakenly don't get drafted. I think the NCAA would probably love to have them back, and you have a high profile name that comes back and doesn't get drafted. I don't see how, why that wouldn't happen. I say in 5 years, they're going to let players go back to school ultimately.
Do you want to see it almost like mirror the NBA where if they don't like their draft position, they can go back? Like in the NBA, if you're a second round pick, but you don't sign with an agent, you can go back to college, but that team keeps your rights. Is that something you'd like to see, or just re-enter the draft pool?
I mean, personally, probably not. I think it just makes it a little more complex to predict the draft. Like it makes my job harder, right? Because I think teams would take some chances on some players more so. But I wouldn't hate it. Like I'm definitely a for the players guy. Like if it helps the player out, like let's help the player out. I don't think the NFL is a little different in that way, that retaining their rights and going and playing somewhere like baseball or basketball isn't going to help you as much as just playing in the NFL. Right. You might as well just play in the NFL. But like if you want to try to make more money, then I think you should be able to try to do that. And what's the worst thing that could happen? You can go back in the draft, you get undrafted again. Like, oh, whoa, okay. Oh well.
All right. Sal's got a question in the comments. I figured we'll just go ahead and answer this one here. Can a player announce for the Senior Bowl but then take it back? I thought I remember somebody doing that last year. You are correct. It happened multiple times last year. Rook or Horo, whatever his name is. Anyway, I'm going to butcher that 100 times between now and draft date. He was one of those guys that did it. So yes, it's definitely a thing that can happen, and it's definitely something we will probably see again this year.
Yeah, Gottlieb Ayedzi as well from Frostburg State, transferred to Maryland. So sometimes those transfer requests come in.
He probably should have came on out.
He probably should have after what happened this year. But I would think we'll get to some of the first invites here. I'm sure.
Yeah, we're gonna definitely talk about that.
But I think there's a player that got invited that exact same thing could happen to.